Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor in the Oval Office last week. The DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy.
That is the kind of line that makes one half of the room laugh and the other half quietly rethink their talking points because the joke lands. Sure, but the idea underneath it hits hard. Democratic socialism sounds incredible when it is used as a slogan. Free this, guaranteed that, make billionaires pay, no one struggles, everyone benefits sounds perfect, inspiring, almost too perfect, and that is exactly the issue. Because once these ideas leave the stage and run into real budgets, taxes, bureaucracy, and human behavior, the dream becomes messy. Suddenly, taxing the rich is not some magic fix. Single-payer healthcare is not just a switch you flip. And democratic socialism is not simply capitalism with nicer branding and a reusable bag. Bill Maher went directly at that illusion. And this was not a soft or polite disagreement. This was Maher taking the progressive wish list, holding it up, and asking the one question politicians hate the most. Where is the money coming from? And before we get into it, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your opinion because this one will definitely divide people. Are Democrats smart to flirt with socialism, or are they heading straight into a political disaster? Maher begins with the issue that every socialist argument eventually hits taxes. Because no matter how often politicians dress it up with phrases like fairness, justice, or making the rich pay, the core question stays the same: how much is enough? And this is where Maher does something many politicians avoid. He makes it personal. He does not hide behind theory. He does not speak like someone who just discovered Scandinavian models online. He basically says, look, I'm wealthy. I already pay a huge amount, and I'm tired of hearing that people like me contribute nothing.
American economy, to me, I know I've said this before, I still don't get it. Last week was tax day, and as usual, because HBO is so generous, and I'm sure so will be the new owners, I paid to the government, if you add in state tax, local, sales, property, fees, Obamacare, probably almost 60% of what I earn. That's a lot, and I still wouldn't mind if Bernie Sanders would stop saying the rich don't pay taxes. And while I'm sure the super rich with their army of accountants and corporate loopholes get away with murder, us regular rich people pay a shit ton of taxes. And who stands up and gives us a pat on the back? Nobody, that's who.
Now that is the part most people avoid because it is easy to say, the rich don't pay taxes, when the rich are just imaginary villains in a speech. It becomes much harder when someone says, actually, I already gave a large portion of what I earned. And no, this is not a sympathy story. Nobody is feeling sorry for rich entertainers, but Maher's main point is not about feeling bad for him. The real point is, if the government is already collecting large amounts from high earners, why does the system still seem broken? That is the uncomfortable question. Because if the promise is give us more money and we will fix poverty, then people can ask why the money already taken has not solved it.
The top 10% pay 72% of all federal income taxes, and the bottom half, 3%. The Democratic Socialists talk about socialism like we don't already have a lot. Social Security, unemployment, Medicare, nutritional assistance, Medicaid, Obamacare, disability, housing subsidies. Again, not against it, just the same question. How can you be soaking the rich and failing the poor so badly?
That one line captures the whole debate. How can you tax the rich heavily and still fail the poor so badly? Because that is where the socialist argument starts to weaken. We are constantly told the problem is that America does not spend enough, tax enough, or redistribute enough. But look around. The government already runs huge programs. There is already Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food aid, housing support, disability benefits, unemployment, healthcare subsidies, bailouts, grants, and assistance. America is not some harsh system with no safety net. It is already a large mixed system with capitalism on one side and government redistribution on the other. So when results still look bad, when people skip doctor visits, live paycheck to paycheck, sleep in tents, and struggle with bills, maybe the issue is not just that Washington needs more money. Maybe the issue is that Washington is very good at collecting money and very bad at turning that money into working systems.
So badly that on 60 Minutes last week, they were redoing the story they did 18 years ago about remote area medical. That is the program modeled after medical teams that drop into the poorest countries in the world for a few days to set up a tent where people with no access to health care can get some. And now we're one of those countries. Doctors within borders.
That image is not just awkward. It is deeply embarrassing. Not a small mistake, but a serious failure. This is national-level embarrassment. The richest country in the world should not have people lining up like they are in an emergency zone just to get basic health care. And yet that is reality. The same country that sends money, aid, military support, and help across the world still has citizens relying on temporary clinics like they are on the edge of survival. And that is where Maher's criticism hits hardest. He is not saying ignore the poor, he is saying the opposite. He is asking why the poor are constantly used as the emotional reason for expanding government power while their real conditions do not improve enough to justify it. That is a serious accusation. Because if a system keeps asking for more money in the name of helping people, but the suffering does not change, eventually people stop hearing compassion and start seeing...
How can it be that the federal government alone took in over $5 trillion in taxes last year, and we still need that? Are we really this incompetent and corrupt? Don't answer that. Whatever it is, somehow the ultra-rich keep getting ultra-richer, while a growing percentage is feeling truly desperate. You just wouldn't know it because everyone on TV is rich. Reality TV, rich women day drinking. Drama, rich women whose friend got murdered. Comedy, rich men shouting into cell phones.
That is the part many people miss. Maher is not defending billionaires. He is not acting like the ultra-rich are perfect or paying everything fairly. He openly says they use accountants and loopholes. But he also says something the left does not like hearing. You can criticize billionaires and still admit the government is inefficient. Both things can be true. The rich can be manipulating the system and the government can still be wasting huge amounts of money. Corporate loopholes can be excessive and government spending can still disappear without results. Billionaires can have too much power and democratic socialists can still be selling unrealistic ideas. That is what makes Maher difficult for both sides. He is not playing simple team politics. He is not saying one side is perfect and the other is wrong. He is saying your slogans do not match reality and nothing challenges ideology more than reality.
Dami seems like a nice guy, and I congratulate him on an extraordinary political achievement. But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who before the 24 election said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get fucking torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies? Well, at least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right?
This is where Maher shifts from economics to politics. And honestly, Democrats should pay attention because there is a big gap between what trends online and what wins real voters. On social media, calling yourself a democratic socialist can sound bold, modern, and morally strong. In very liberal areas, it can even be praised. But in the places that decide elections, that label sounds very different. Many voters hear socialism and they do not think of free healthcare or student loan relief. They think of government control, higher taxes, shortages, lectures from elites, and leaders who act like your income belongs to the state. That may frustrate progressives, but politics is not about what you hope people hear. It is about what they actually hear. And what many hear from the far left is this: we want to redesign the system and you will pay for it.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor f*** in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
That difference matters because for years, democratic socialists have benefited from branding confusion. They run alongside Democrats, work with them, support them, and oppose Republicans. But when socialism becomes unpopular, suddenly it is treated like a harmless label. But words matter. If someone says they are not a Democrat, believe them. If they say they are a democratic socialist, believe them and then ask what that really means beyond slogans, because the message always starts soft. It is about fairness, dignity, healthcare, and helping families. And who disagrees with that? Nobody wants people crushed by debt or unable to afford housing. But then policies grow. Higher taxes, larger programs, more control, more promises, more agencies, more spending, more rules, and more experts telling everyday people they are wrong to question it.
Again, this is against why people sometimes, I think, question some of what you're saying. This is a survey, student loan forgiveness recipients. 73% of applicants say they are likely to spend their extra money on non-essential, including vacations, smartphone, drugs, and alcohol. They admitted that to the pollster.
Who is this pollster?
NBC News. 52% they are very likely to buy new clothing. 46% they would use the money for vacation and eat out at restaurants.
At some point, people start asking if this is compassion or control presented in a friendly way. Now this is where things get interesting, because it highlights something people rarely admit. Americans may sound supportive of socialism when it is theoretical, but they act differently when it becomes real. Give people extra money, and what do they want? Better phones, trips, restaurants, clothes, homes, cars, comfort, enjoyment, and maybe even something to show off online. Because even while criticizing capitalism, people still want the benefits. That does not make them bad, it makes them human. But it also challenges the idea that people secretly want a system where everyone sacrifices equally for the group. Most people are not dreaming of government-managed equality. They are aiming for success. They want opportunity. They want progress. They want their children to do better. They want to own things, create things, choose freely, and enjoy rewards. That is not socialism. That is capitalism with improvements.
I know the kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes.
That lesson from history is powerful because it is simple. You do not need long reports or complex debates. Just look at results where people can build, trade, invest, own, compete, and create. You usually see growth, not perfection, but progress. Capitalism has flaws. It can be unfair, harsh, and unequal if left unchecked. But the alternative has often performed worse. Socialism begins with strong promises and often ends with shortages. It starts with equality and ends with leaders explaining why others must sacrifice longer. It claims to remove greed, but those in power rarely face the same limits as everyone else. That is why Maher's argument works. The question is not whether capitalism needs rules. Of course it does. The real question is whether democratic socialists want balance or total control.
I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism, but the DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more.
And that leads to the final point. America already has government programs, redistribution, safety nets, subsidies, bailouts, and large public spending. So the debate is not about capitalism versus kindness. That is an oversimplified version. The real debate is balance versus extremism. Do you want capitalism supported by safety nets, or do you want government power expanded until every issue leads to another program, tax, agency, rule, and lecture? That is the real choice. And Maher is warning Democrats that if they allow the socialist wing to define the party, they are giving their opponents an easy target. Because average voters may want healthcare reform, lower costs, and fair taxation. But that does not mean they want socialism. And it definitely does not mean they want leaders who treat moderation as weakness. So the takeaway is simple. Taxing the rich more is not a full plan, it is just a slogan. and slogans do not fix failing schools, struggling cities, expensive healthcare, or a shrinking middle class. If Washington already collects huge amounts of money and still fails to deliver, then maybe the first question should not be who to tax next. Maybe it should be who is misusing what is already collected. That is why Maher's argument stands out. He is not defending every billionaire. He is not claiming capitalism is perfect. He is saying democratic socialism keeps selling a vision that falls apart when tested by reality, history, and human behavior. And whether you agree with him or not, that is a debate Democrats cannot avoid forever. So what do you think? Is Maher right that socialism hurts Democrats politically, or is the left correct that the system needs major change? Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if this gave you something to think about, and subscribe for more political breakdowns.